What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to another solo leveling arise video. All right, guys, big shout out to Moose and Burr. If you guys don't know, obviously Moose is a content creator. If you have not followed him, please go do so. He comes out some of the best testing content out there for SLA, and he's also in my Discord with Burr, who did a lot of the formulas here. And we're going to talk a little bit about the video that Mouse made, a very long 30-minute video, but one, or 35-minute video, but one that deserves your attention. So I'm going to put the description of this video in the actual description itself. So please go click it, like it, support him. Great dude. A lot of good work here, and I'm going to kind of give you guys the breakdown of what's going on. So this is the topic of defense penetration and how the new rise of Yusuyun and defense penetration has come into play. So first off, I want to say again a big shout out to Mouse for doing all the legwork here. I'm just going to make you guys aware of it because that's what we do. And then I'm also going to talk about Burr, obviously, who came up with the formula here. So this is Burr's formula, just so you guys are aware. He came up with a defense formula here, defense stats to percentages, shows you guys the formula. So for example, there's a defense stat. This is what it'll give you when you use that stat. And then this is also how you determine it. Okay, so pretty straightforward stuff here, but also works backwards, and you guys can see it in fact does compute correctly. So shout out to Burr for, as usual, being the math whiz that he is. And this is very important because it's going to show you guys what happens when you stack defense pen properly and how much of a damage increase it does. So I'm not going to go through all of Mouse's video. I highly recommend you guys do, though. He has been doing a lot of work when it comes down to defense pen and defense decrease. So just going to do a really quick recap of how defense works. So the more defense minus defense stats, so for example, shadow step, Choi's weapon, and a Ruiz's weapon and stuff that you use, eventually it starts to actually reduce and decline on how much defense it actually does reduce. So for example, in Guild Boss, the higher the Guild Boss goes and rages, the lower and lower those actually affected. What actually does affect it a lot is defense penetration, the stat itself. So we're going to talk a lot about defense penetration. At the moment, currently, just so you guys are aware, only one unit can hit some of these higher numbers, and that's Yusuyun. That's what kind of gives her the massive amount of appeal that she's getting, plus the insane amount of damage that she's pulling off with her defense pen, right? So just so you guys are aware, Mouse did a lot of the work himself here. You guys can see. So Burr gave him the formula. Mouse put the formula to use and actually came up with some of these numbers. So all the credits go to those two guys. I'm just making people aware. So Guild Boss is an exception here. This only applies to rage 0. Guild Boss defense also increases as the rage increases. The effectiveness of defense decrease also decreases, and this is constant. Okay, so the more the boss gets rages, the more likely you're going to see the reduction of that whole defense down becoming a big thing. So that's why defense pen is so powerful here, because you don't have the same factors as you would with the other one. Okay, so defense penetration and damage output. You guys can see right here. Hold on, let me put this on my volume so everybody can hear it.
Just a simple representation of your actual damage output. Once pull the damage.
Okay, so this is what you want to focus on. This is really the big picture here. You guys can see penetration, right? So this is defense pen penetration. This is the stat. This is defense stat itself. So the stat of defense, effectiveness defense. This is what the percentage is. This is the damage increase. So when you have 0%, you guys can see here 0 damage increase. But when you go to 10%, you guys can see the damage increase goes up to 8.11%. So the more defense pen you have, the better it becomes. But take a look at this. At 20%, you're at 17%, right? But at 30%, now you're closer to the actual mark. But the moment you hit 40 and above, guys, you see the damage increase actually goes up exponentially. So 40% defense penetration gives you 42% damage increase. 50% defense penetration gives you 60%. 60% gives you 81%. 70% gives you 110. 80% gives you 150, 90% gives you 207, and then 100% defense penetration gives you 300%, okay? Now, if you're wondering how you can see your defense penetration, I'll show you guys real quick. All right, guys, so let's take a look at defense pen. And remember, this is all going to be based on formulas, and a couple things to remember: that passives are not affected by this formula. The formula is affected by the actual defense penetration stat. So when you look at the stat over here, right? So I'm going to go over here. Click on the stat. You guys can see I have on my free-to-play account 36,437 defense pen, which equates to 42.15%. Now remember, as usual, this is going to be affected by the target's level, so the mob's level in this case, right? So if you want to go into nitty-gritty, here's the actual formula for defense pen. Shout out to Burr again for creating this. So for example, if you have let's just say here, well, we'll use an easier example closer to mine. Okay, let's use this one. So using that formula right there, if you were to punch in these numbers, let's say 365k or 36k, say 36k, enemy level is level 100, while your total defense penetration is actually 24.34. Okay, so you guys can work this out with the math that's shown here in Burr's formula. If you want to just put in your numbers, you'll see exactly how that works out. Okay, now the reason why Yu So-Yun has such an easy way of doing this is because she has so many passives that give her defense penetration. So for example, if you look at her weapon just alone, on her weapon alone, right? If you maximize this weapon, if you plan to go to A5 with it, right? You guys can already see here, it increases the user's defense penetration by 12%. Now again, that 12% is a flat 12%. So 12% right there, right? Now if you go into her skills, let's go back out here. You go to her skills, she has a lot of skills that also possess defense penetration. So for example, Spotlight, whenever this occurs, increases the user's defense penetration by 24%, and on top of that, increases the user's damage increase stat equal to 24% of the user's defense penetration. So you're getting a flat 24% right there alone, okay? And then take the defense stat, and then you get 24% of that defense, defense penetration stat, you get 24% of that as the damage increase as well. So you got 24% there, you got some from the weapon. Now if you look even further down here, her A2 also gives you guys more defense penetration. There's another 12% right there, right? So even more defense pen being added to the already stacking defense pen that you have. So this is why Yu So-Yun has such an easy time getting to that. Now if you add in even other units that can do more defense penetration, well, you're gonna also be stacking even further, right? If you go to Essel's, for example, A4, team members' defense penetration is increased by 4%, so an extra 4% right there. And then if you go to Gina's, right, Gina also has an extra 8%, I believe, for defense pen and fire attack for units. So an easy way to get her to that 100% mark. So with that being said, let's just put all that stuff into an actual formula, right? Let's just say we do take a little bit of a calculator here and take into account everything we just talked about. So let's just say with the amount that I have, the number that we're looking at obviously is a little bit lower. It's not the 42% that you see there. Let's just say, in fact, it is going to be 24.34%, okay, 0.34%. So that's defense pen using my defense penetration stat. Remember, that is affected. This is going to be affected by the monster level. Again, going from 42 to 24, level 100 monster. Let's just say we're doing WOBL. I think it's level 100 monster. So let's just say this is the first boss we're focusing on. So that's 24.34% there. If we take into account now 18% from the arm set, right? So if I put my full arm set on here, you guys can see I have it on. It's going to ignore 18% of the target's defense. Now ideally here you don't want to use this, you actually want to use outstanding abilities, because that extra damage coming through from the damage increase for having more mana is going to be way more efficient. So let's just say I switch this over to this. Right now this is going to be more damage increase. Obviously it does not affect defense pen, so don't worry about it, but nonetheless you want to do outstanding abilities here, as Mouse mentioned in his video, because Yu So-Yun's just not attacking that efficiently, and she doesn't crit fast enough or crit as often as you want her to crit, right? So keep that in mind. So okay, so there you go, an 18% there. Now let's take her weapon into account. If you take her weapon here and then you boost this weapon to max, right, we're gonna go 1, 2. That's an extra 12% right there. So let's take the 12% plus 12% right there. Oopsie, let's go back here. So 12% right there. So that's 54% right there. And then we have ourselves, what else? We have ourselves her passive, right? Her passive gives, I think, an extra 12%. So let's go back to her passive. Right here, if I go to passive, right there. So 24% from Spotlight. So let's just say the Spotlight buff is going to be on there. So that's 24% plus 24%. Plus, we just said an extra 12% from her A2 passive, plus 12. You're already hitting at 90%. Okay, so already at 90%. Now, if you take Essel here and throw in an extra 4% from her, right, if you go to A4, which gives an extra 4% for each fire member, stacking up to 3 times, right? So let's say you have a full 3-man team, 3-woman team. So that's 1, 2, 3. So that's going to be 12% there, stacking up to 3 times. That already pushes you over the edge of 100%, right? So you're already past that point. So you can easily hit, with just the setup that I have, with that, and then your damage will skyrocket, right? You guys can see here at 100% with a monster with 75% defense stat only, you're hitting 300% more. Now, if you keep watching Mouse's video, he goes even further into it, showing even bigger numbers. So again, if you look at a monster with 85%, you can see he goes up to 566% damage increase versus with 75,000, only 400%, right? So as you can see here, the numbers will grow as soon as the monster's defense grows. Your numbers will also grow quite a bit based on the defense percentage or defense penetration that you have. Ideally passively, right? And that's why Yusuyun's so good, is she has passively so many different ways to get those. Now you guys can see here, as mentioned, Armed is definitely the best set for her because of that passive. Outstanding Abilities is the best set for her there for that. And Mouse here does a great job showcasing this and showcasing the 3-woman team here. That's all fire, and watching them just completely eat the monster alive. And again, this chart here just shows the level of monster and what your defense percentage is from a passive percentage, and then what your defense penetration is from your actual stat. And then if you put those together, you'll see exactly what your defense percentage is, defense penetration percentage is on the mob, right? So level 100 mobs are orange bars, so they're these ones over here. You can see the higher the level of the mob, the lower impact this has, but this stays pretty much the same. So you guys can see right here, going through it, he kind of goes and shows you guys all of his cores. Now, for cores, you ideally want to have all defense penetration cores. That's going to be very important, of course, but you also don't want to neglect having no crit. So crit's going to be a pretty big one as well too, right? So there you guys go. He's putting in more cores in here, or he's putting cores in with crit. There you go. He's adding crit instead, right? And you guys can see now he's exactly where he's above the crit amount that he wants to have, and defense penetration is at 28%. Okay, and now if you put all the passives in place, switch everything around, you'll see that he is going to eat up this boss's bar fairly quickly and efficiently. So this is why this is becoming so much more popular, is right now with monsters that have high defense, this is the meta right now. This is the way to go. Defense penetration just eats opponents up when they have high defense, and it does way more the damage increase than crit damage does. So this is why this monster here gets absolutely demolished by Yusuyun, and most likely we'll have a very similar setup with what's her name, with Kanai when she's out. I'm assuming she's going to be also a defense penetration fire DPS, just to stick kind of with the role. And obviously Choi is also beneficial from this because he doesn't crit, so you're putting all defense penetration on him, and that's going to maximize the amount of damage he does. But look at this, like he's just shredding his HP so quickly here with that defense pen. So there you guys go. Again, big shout out to Burr on the formulas. Big shout out to Mouse on getting this out there. You guys now know the formula a little bit. You guys can build around this. Obviously, the arm set comes back into play here with Yusuyun. And again, the more defense the monster has, the more defense penetration you have, the more damage you're going to do. Essentially the formula that you want to look at. If you guys have any comments or questions, let me know in the comment section. I'll see you guys in the next one. Again, go like Mouse's video, subscribe, like Mouse. Great job as usual. Burr, as usual, you're a math whiz. We love you, buddy. And thanks again, guys, for watching. Take care.